exciting to have Dr. Timothy Day and Mr. Akon Mubaga. Mugabwa. Can you pronounce your name for me, Akon?
Mugabwa.
Mugabwa. Thank you. On the this call today, or on the Zoom series. Let me tell you a little bit about TiE itself. TiE Silicon Valley has been around for 32 years. We are a place to foster entrepreneurship. We have incredible talent in terms of charter members who have actually built companies and taking companies public. Over the last 30 years, we've actually helped create over 2 million jobs and over $1 trillion worth of companies. So, come join us. It's an incredible journey at TiE. You can check out our website, tiesv.ai. With that, I will give it to Akon, who will actually conduct the interview going forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you for having us. Hi, Timothy. Thank you
Hi.
for joining us. I'm excited to have this conversation with you and to share it with the rest of the audience because it's quite a unique and I would say very interesting journey.
No, thank you. Yeah, very much looking forward to it myself.
I think we should start with the beginning. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about your background, what you were like growing up, and then how you chose your field of study.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my name is Tim. I grew up in small town Kansas. So was always interested in science and excelled well in school. And I think like many folks who do well in school and like science, you get encouraged to go to the medical school. So that was the initial goal. But during my time at the University of Kansas, where I did my undergrad, I started working in a medicinal chemistry lab and really fell in love with research. And also got really interested in learning about different diseases and genetic diseases that don't have treatments. So if you're a doctor and there's not a treatment available for that particular disease, there's not as much as you can do. So I felt like as a scientist, I would be able to have a broad impact and be able to take that same interest in translational medicine, but apply it to the lab. Yeah. And then I did a small internship at UC Berkeley while I was an undergrad. Really because yeah, exactly. Really because I love the TV show, The OC. So I was like, all right, I got to go to California, see if it's like if it's the same as on TV. But really enjoyed my time at Berkeley and got to work in a really fantastic lab. And that's where I ended up doing my PhD focused on AAV gene therapy. So kind of always had that scientific itch. But really it was getting my feet wet in the lab and wanting to make a broader impact that drove me towards research.
And so can you explain to the layman what gene therapy is?
Yes, absolutely. So gene therapy is using genetic medicine or using genes, whether that's DNA or RNA, and many of us are all familiar with that from the COVID vaccines, to ameliorate disease. So whether that's to halt, prevent, or reverse different diseases. So in the case of the COVID vaccine, mRNA was used, but traditionally, for genetic diseases, a patient may have a particular mutation and or a gene that's been mutated that you can provide a healthy functional copy, or with the newer CRISPR gene editing tools, you're able to directly fix the genome and change the disease state.
And so you're at Berkeley, you're working on gene therapy, doing your PhD there. Walk me through at what stage you decide that you want to go from your work into spinning out a company to solve a problem, and how do you meet the people that go along with you on the journey?
Absolutely. So I had one experience while I was in undergrad where I had worked on a particular antifungal compound, and we published the paper and we patented the molecule. And I thought, great, like everybody's going to get this molecule. It's going to be awesome. I did so amazing. But then you quickly learn that there's so much more than just discovering the molecule to actually translating it to patients. So I think that was kind of my first taste of understanding that there's more to it than just discovering the drug. Then being at Berkeley, there's quite a entrepreneurial spirit, especially being so close to Silicon Valley, and Berkeley has definitely fostered a excellent entrepreneurship community. And really what happened is one of my friends told me that he had a company. I was like, wait, you're a grad student? You have a company? Like, I didn't even know that was possible. So then that kind of piqued my interest. And then I did what I later learned is called informational interviews. So I just started asking around, like, are there other student CEOs or other postdoc CEOs and or people in entrepreneurship, and just got lunch with people and bought them coffee and learned about their story. And I think that just made it more tangible, that there were people that I knew and were in similar programs pursuing that path. And then I was also really fortunate to be in a academic lab in Dave Schaefer and John Flannery's labs. And Dave, of course, plays a large part in the Berkeley entrepreneurship ecosystem for biotech. So, I was able to watch him go from an idea in the lab to having that idea translate to a company, 4D Molecular Therapeutics, and that company go public. So there are just lots of examples around. And then was also able to join and participate in different accelerator and incubator programs to kind of test out the idea that we had, like the Citrus Foundry, for example.
Oh, okay. And what was that like, the Citrus Foundry as an incubator?
It was incredibly helpful. It was actually our first money in, and we had been so I met my co-founder in a class, and he had an idea for doing gene therapy for the gastrointestinal tract, and so we started noodling on that idea, and we thought, we're in Silicon Valley, we can just go out and raise money with this great idea, and investors were very kind to us, but told us, you have to actually have data and a business model and a real plan. You can't just come ask for money. But then, we were able to, that helped us to really refine our initial idea. And we took a very, very rough idea to the Citrus Foundry, and they were kind enough to take us in and begin mentoring us on our plan and help us to do our first experiments, which then led us to participating in IndieBio as an accelerator program. And that allowed us to get another set of data that then allowed us to get our first true investment.
Okay, and so how long have you been working with your co-founder, so to speak, before you decided to launch?
Yes, I think we did the exact opposite of the advice that I would give. Is like we met each other, and then a week later we got coffee and started a company. So I'd say, fortunately, we get along really well together, and I think it's worked out well for us. But I would probably not give that same advice to other people. Maybe know them longer than a few days. Yeah.
And so this was how many years ago?
This was in 2016. So
2016. Understood. And then you set up, you talked about you were working on specific medicine for the gastrointestinal part. So can you tell me more about that and explain more about the problem that you were specifically set out to solve?
Yeah, exactly. So I mentioned a little bit on gene therapy and being able to use DNA and RNA as a medicine. But one of the key challenges in the field is delivery. Like, how do you actually get these genetic payloads to the right cells and to the right tissues in the body? So that's what my PhD was working on, was how do we engineer delivery vehicles using viruses to deliver these therapeutic payloads to the eye. And so then meeting my co-founder was kind of the same idea. How do we develop delivery vehicles to deliver payloads to the gastrointestinal tract? So then we started thinking about how we could approach that and what different technologies we could use to get those payloads there, because there's so many known mutations or a large number of diseases where the causal gene is known, but it's very challenging to get the CRISPR editing tool or the RNA or DNA there and at the right levels to be able to have a therapeutic effect. So it's really focusing on that delivery problem and coming at it from that angle to be able to help continue to grow the field of gene and cell therapy.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. And you set out to do that. Is that what you are still doing today?
It is.
Yes?
Yeah. Although I had started with viruses and delivering DNA. And that's where we initially started. Then we pivoted to lipid nanoparticles. And then in 2019, before it was cool, we pivoted to mRNA lipid nanoparticles. So now so the idea has always been the same of how do we deliver these genetic payloads to treat a range of gastrointestinal diseases, but the vehicle has changed over time.
And, as entrepreneurs, we always think of, the market and then the competition. Is anybody else doing this? And what for you is the biggest challenge in achieving what you are doing today?
Yes, so there are different folks that are approaching delivering payloads to the gastrointestinal tract, although no one is doing the same delivery mechanism as we are. So there's like a group associated with Bob Langer and MIT that they're using a physical capsule to use sugar needles to inject the genetic payloads into the stomach or into the intestinal tract. Where we're using nanoparticles to gently coat the intestinal tract. But where we see competition is for each different disease modality. So if we're interested in inflammatory bowel disease, there are other people that are working on inflammatory bowel disease or even the same subset, but they may be using a systemically injected treatment or something else. So there still is always competition, but since the gastrointestinal tract is a pretty challenging environment for gene delivery, there aren't a lot of other players in that space from that angle.
Understood. And if my information is correct, you are more focused on substances that can be ingested orally, right?
Yeah, it's a gene pill. So you would take a pill and then it releases the nanoparticles similar to what were used for the COVID vaccines. But our secret sauce is we basically have fortified those and made them incredibly rock solid and able to withstand the harsh environment of the GI tract through many years of engineering the delivery system. So we're able to take those same payloads that would otherwise be digested and make sure that they are stable and protect the mRNA and deliver to the cells in the gastrointestinal tract.
Oh, understood. And so this is a field that you feel is expanding and growing faster and faster?
Absolutely. So, one silver lining of the COVID pandemic was the fact that there really was a light shown on mRNA technology and gene delivery technologies. And also during that time, there's been the first, mRNA lipid nanoparticle deliver CRISPR systems that are showing that you can now, in the body, in vivo, deliver these genetic payloads and change the genome to have health benefits. So the field is expanding, and we're able to participate in that by being able to open up another tissue for treatment through our delivery vehicle. And I believe this field will continue to expand, and really we're in the age of biology and genetic medicines, and couple that with all of the new AI and machine learning tools that allow for screening. I think that we're in for a bright future.
I was about to ask, with everything that's happening in artificial intelligence, how has that impacted, let's say, on a daily basis, the work that you are doing, and also, the outlook of your work?
Absolutely. So we do use AI tools definitely on the productivity front. Like we use read.ai for our lab meetings to take notes, and are able to use Notion and AI there for the different productivity aspects. And then we have talked to some companies and some folks that allow for screening of the data and the libraries that we've generated, though we've not fully implemented that into our screening stack. But there definitely are other companies where they are starting from the machine learning and AI angle. And I think really the benefit on the delivery vehicles and even on the engineering space is that one challenge that, say, you're either engineering a delivery vehicle or engineering a CRISPR or trying to make a new RNA, the amount of search space is huge. It's astronomical. Even if you have libraries of tens of millions of different variants, you're not even getting a single digit percent. So I think another place where AI and machine learning will aid the field and accelerate progress, we'll be able to in silico go through and find new areas of the protein or ways to mutate the delivery vehicle that you wouldn't have thought of just because, or wouldn't have been able to get to just because the search space is so huge in the amount of combinations that you can make.
Understood. Thanks for laying that out.
Yeah.
And we talked about the current macro changes, artificial intelligence. We just went through a specific period, the pandemic as well. And I think there was a story about a pivot and you getting some funds from Third Rock. I wanted to see if you could share that experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to chat about it. So, I mean, of course, the funny thing is, we as a company, we were, March 2020, we started a fundraise, and that was quickly shut down by the pandemic. So, that was an interesting time where we had to figure out how to be scrappy and be entrepreneurial. And I'm proud to say that we were able to keep every employee employed during that time, and we were able to make it through that challenge. But during that time, we were able to meet with Third Rock, which is a blue chip, incredibly prestigious investment firm which has some of the best people in biotech at their firm. And their typical model is what's called a foundry model, where they are incubating ideas inside the company, bringing entrepreneurs into the company, and doing company formation themselves. But during COVID, they were experimenting with some different models and experimenting with investing in external companies. So we got to be one of those companies that they invested in. And that was a huge boon in the fact that we were able to interface with people with doctors and scientists and the deep network that Third Rock has, and even getting experts who had helped to build Moderna or helped to build Alnylam or all these other lipid nanoparticle and mRNA companies that have been hugely successful. So we were able to tap into that network and bring some of those folks on as advisors, as well as continue to grow the company with their support.
Congratulations on that, and being able to withstand macro changes that are challenging, like the ones we went through in the past 2.5 years. I mean, is a testament to both as co-founders, your durabilities as entrepreneurs. So it's very impressive to hear about. I want to go back to the audio, the business part of it. Who were your initial customers, and has that changed over time?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so really in the therapeutic space or the delivery space, or kind of the biotech space that we inhabit, there's two go-to-market strategies that you can have. One, you can be a platform company, a pure play platform company, where in our example, we would have our proprietary delivery system. We could go to each big pharma or different biotech companies and say, hey, what do you want to deliver? Or, hey, we think we could deliver this for you, and that could be beneficial for you. And we would license our technology to them for their particular targets. So that's one strategy that you can use. The other strategy is you can build the therapeutics yourself. So you can have your own therapeutic asset that you're like, we want to go after this particular target. We're going to keep that in-house for a period of time. You can still sell that asset later on, or you can take it all the way to clinic. Or you can do what we're doing now, which is a hybrid model, where we both have biopharma collaborations and relationships where we're working with them to deliver their therapeutic payloads to the gastrointestinal tract. And then we have our own internal assets that we're also developing. So we're kind of splitting the difference as a hybrid model, because you're able to get non-dilutive capital from the collaborations and ultimately from the biopharma deals that can help fund your own internal programs in a more like equity efficient manner.
Yes, and so the nature of a startup and a venture-backed business is to grow at a specific pace. And sometimes as founders, we find that it comes at a detriment of the ideas that we want to develop and expand, in a longer period of time. How do you balance the trade-off between, the fiduciary responsibilities, the investors' incentives, the pace at which you expect it to grow as a venture-backed business, and then the research dimension of a company such as yours?
Of course, yeah, it's always a challenging balance to manage all those different things. I think the nice thing, and I really do think that most of the people that are, in biotech and in therapeutics are there to make a difference and to help patients. So I think if you're keeping patients as your North Star of how you can be most effective with your technology or with your company to help patients, I think that's one way to help manage that. And of course, you're going to have different, and also I think with those different stakeholders, if you have a clear goal or mission, then you can find other stakeholders that align with that goal and mission as well. And so then they would want to grow at the similar pace as you. Of course, there's always pivots and changes, and those relationships can change. But I do think if you have a clear mission and goal and find stakeholders that align with that and point that towards patients, you'll probably be able to manage that in a pretty good way.
That's actually a pretty good advice, right? The mission drives the rest, and so if everybody aligns, the organization and constellation that it's a part of align on the mission, then it should be easier to explain and to justify the decisions that are being made in that direction. Yes.
Absolutely.
So you have a PhD. You're a co-founder as well?
No, yeah.
Oh,
That's
you do.
unique in that
Okay.
way.
And so that's something particular. You have a very strong vertical, right? In what ways has it been very helpful in your journey? Besides, the scientific vertical expertise, in what way has it been helpful? And then in what way has it been a challenge for those out there who are considering that?
Absolutely. So in the ways that it's been helpful, I think in graduate school and in an ideal scenario, you learn how to learn and you learn how to ask the right questions, and you are somewhat, depending on your lab situation, you may have to be entrepreneurial in your own lab situation to get your project moving forward, or to find the collaborator that has the right equipment for you to be able to accomplish your thesis. So I think there's a lot of parallels that are there. And I think the other thing that's nice as a graduate student is you actually have a lot of freedom. So I actually didn't view, so I started the company while I was in graduate school, and I actually took a small break during my PhD. Fortunately, my advisors were very supportive of that to pursue the company full time. And so I had a 4-month period to try the company out. And, if we were able to get data and able to generate investment, then I would move on to that full time, like write my thesis quickly and then move on to that. And if it didn't work out, then I could write my thesis a little slower and look for a job or something else there. So I think, depending on your situation, and I was fortunate to have incredibly supportive mentors, you can have a lot of flexibility to explore those things while you're in graduate school. I think one detriment to a PhD is you may be thinking too scientifically about your business and not thinking about it as a business and thinking about it as your own science project or lab. So in a few of the different accelerator programs, they hammer it home that you have to transition from a scientist to an entrepreneur. It doesn't mean that you don't do good science, but you also have to make sure that the science works with the overall business and the company and the goal within that. And you may have to give up the pet project or only stay focused on a certain set of things to accomplish the company mission, which, if you were in academia, you may pursue the more complex and interesting and more publishable result, where in industry, you may follow the more clear-cut path because that's more de-risked. So I think shifting your mindset a little bit can sometimes take a minute for different PhDs.
Understood. And I want to talk about culture a bit. We've seen the transition with the pandemic. A lot of companies have gone fully remote. A lot of startups have been created in a fully remote way. What's the workplace like at Particella?
For us, we're in person, so we still operate in person. Of course, where there's flexibility, and we do our lab meetings on Zoom, and so if people can't come that day or doing something else, they can still join in a hybrid fashion. But for the most part, we're in person because we're still doing a lot of scientific experiments day to day, and I think just for our own think that the people, yeah, I guess the people that we've selected for, they also prefer to be in person. But there's always flexibility. We're not, there's flexibility, of course, but I'd say vast majority in person for us.
And do you feel that it very much presents itself? You know, some companies are more like a campus, more like a lab, more like an office. What kind of culture do you feel percolates in your
Yeah, I think a mixture of lab and office for sure. I mean, our office is opens up into the lab, so there, it's very accessible to the lab and the experiments that we're doing there. And I think we're still a small startup, so we have a lot of flexibility and can move really quickly. So I think that's an important part of our culture that we try to instill, that if you have an idea, you can run with it and move quickly, because that's really a strong advantage that you have as a nimble company.
That makes sense. And then with all the research that's going on, do you, besides what you're doing as a company on the main, are there contributions that you're making to the literature still?
Yeah, we're definitely interested in publishing, so we definitely will publish our results, of course. I think that's important to attend conferences and to publish, to not to get feedback on the work that you're doing, but and also to plant a flag for people that are looking to participate in what you're doing and shine a light on where you're at. So I think it's very beneficial to do. Yeah.
Makes sense. A little bit of pop culture. You were at Berkeley as a scientist, worked in the lab there.
Yes.
The Berkeley labs and the Lawrence labs also there. I just saw Oppenheimer recently. Have you seen the movie? And did that resonate
I've not seen it yet, but it's definitely on my list. I think in the TikTok generation, a 3-hour movie sounds hard.
2 hours and a half, yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's testing everybody's attention span.
Exactly. So I haven't watched it, but it's definitely on my list. Yeah.
When I was a student, I studied computer engineering, and one of the class that really resonates with me, and the theme of what you were talking to was generic algorithms given by Dick Rose at the Catholic University of Leuven. What is one of the classes that has really marked you on your journey while you were at Kansas, and also in particular while you were at Berkeley?
I would actually say my intro to philosophy class was my most impactful class when I was at the University of Kansas, really because it was, for me, the first time I was interacting with just thinking from a wide range of different perspectives, because you would read, different philosophies from, different philosophers, and they would have varying perspectives and cogent arguments around why they had that perspective. So I think really learning that kind of flexibility of mental thinking was really useful for me as a freshman there. At Berkeley, I think actually I took a entrepreneurship class that was really helpful, and I'm blanking on the name of the class, but what I liked about it the most is that it was very practical. So you would make a fake company. We had like a tab management app, like literally like the QR codes at the restaurant. We were doing an app like that, pre-pandemic, but it was really about having dynamic pricing of foods and having advertisers be able to like sponsor ads into your app for you to get a discount on your taco or whatever. But the thing that was useful for it was you had to go out and do customer discovery. So we had to go to bars and restaurants and talk to a wide range of people and come back with feedback every week. And so I think that was a really great introduction to entrepreneurship, and the catchphrase was like, you can't do the learning in the classroom. Like you have to go out into the real world, talk to your customers, get feedback. We made a mock app and we would go to the different restaurants and get feedback there. And I think that was the most useful in just helping me to understand customer discovery.
Mm-hmm. I think that those are the very moments that we look back to and very dearly. I think the class is actually called entrepreneurship, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably, yeah.
Maybe that's why, because I'm
Yeah.
familiar with it. There was a time where it started. It was you and your co-founder. it was your baby, you started, and then it expanded into a full-fledged company.
Mhm.
What was your experience like getting the rest of the people that joined your constellation to buy into the mission that we talked earlier on and to understand where you're headed?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, selecting the right people around you is incredibly important. And I think the other thing that you learn is like for different periods of time or stages, different people will be a good fit. And, we've not expanded into a giant company, but we've had some, expansion. But even talking to other friends or seeing other companies, there will be folks that like the earlier stage where things are more free flowing and less structured. And as the company matures, those people, may move on to something else. And that doesn't mean anything bad about you or about your company. It's more the type of environment that best fits their personality or their interest. And I think the other thing, as you continue to grow, you do have to bring in more structure and more rigor and more process into the company to be able to manage the people and manage expectations. And I think the other aspect of it is high levels of communication. Like you're communicating through email, you're communicating verbally, you're communicating through the slide deck, and just having a clear message that you're communicating in multiple different modalities to all the different stakeholders so that everyone's on the same page. I think it is important because sometimes you assume that they read the footnote of your email and they didn't quite get to it. So I think it's important to make sure that you have clear communication.
And speaking of communication, today always begs the question, you're a startup, you want to put the word out there about the work that you're doing. And it's a spectrum between, just sending an email to your investors every month, and then almost being a social network personality where you're posting content daily on a daily basis on the business that you're doing. How do you place the cursor for the work that you do?
Yeah, definitely on the former. Like we definitely don't have a strong advertising presence. I mean, I think the way that we are able to build relationships is, talking to key scientists or key business folks or stakeholders at different large biopharmas, and then also being able to get introductions through our network. I think the stage that we're at in biotech, especially, is a relationship business where you do need to have, some good relationships with folks because, people are so busy or have so much on their plate with what they're doing. So I think we definitely focus on, relationships and warm introductions and even, working with BD folks to facilitate deal flow with biopharmas as opposed to, having something that's more social media facing. Although there definitely are biotech entrepreneurs that do that and do that really well. So it's not like you can't. I definitely is something you can do, but it's just not the approach we take.
And then speaking of communication and the work that you do presents itself very much as B2B. And I would suspect that the actors you interact with are to some extent educated on what you do. But at some point you might need some education. And particularly when it comes to investors, how did you approach the education aspect of your communication on a topic that is quite complex?
Absolutely. I got advice from a CSO once or a framework to think about it. And he said, think about it like Google Maps. You need to be able to zoom out of the Google Maps and talk, at 30,000 feet. And then you need to be able to zoom in. And of course, not everyone you can't have specific expertise in everything. So you need to also figure out where your holes are and find where your experts are that can help you communicate that. But I do think that it is incumbent on me as a founder to be able to have a high level communication with everyone about what we're doing and where I have strong domains of expertise, be able to dive deep in that. And it's also my job to gauge the person that I'm talking to and the appropriate level to communicate with them at. So I really think it's incumbent on the entrepreneur or the founder to be able to go from into the detail and into the weeds and zoom out. And also it's incumbent on you to understand what's appropriate.
That's actually a great analogy. I'm going to use it myself, and I hope that the audience is taking notes because it's a very useful one. And it cannot be understated how important that is to be able to find the right level, to be able to level the person that you're talking to. Otherwise, you just miss, the whole point.
And I think time, I think that you should be cognizant of time because sometimes you have 2 minutes to talk, sometimes you have 2 hours to talk. And I think just being very cognizant of having your main points that you want to get across in whatever time frame. And I think whenever we prepare for pitches or for presentations and we have the key points for the slide or the key points that we want for the meeting, it usually goes better for us.
And as a founder, are you part of any, besides the ones we are here, but are you part of any other communities that you contribute to, that you moderate, or that you just participate in that allow you on your journey as a founder specifically?
Informally, yeah. So there are definitely meetup events that I've participated in that's been helpful. Being part of a number of different accelerator programs, as we did Indie Bio, we did Citrus Foundry, we did the launch program, which was through Skydeck. So we've been able to build up a network of different entrepreneurs as well as from our academic backgrounds, and so I think being able to interact with those folks is incredibly useful and helpful. So yeah, and I think even in more formal contexts can be useful, but ours are more the informal relationships that we've gotten through the different incubator and accelerator programs we've participated in.
Yes, I feel like especially in the time between 2020 and 2022 in the pandemic, it really became apparent how it's important because we can be at our desk working and then just getting out, but it's very siloed. So having people we can interact with even remotely really matters for our mental health, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've covered a lot. I want to make sure that if there are any questions that the public might have, and I see here in the chat that we already have one question for the Q&A, which I will address to you, which is, if you were to start a new company tomorrow, what would you do differently based on your current experience?
That's a good question. I think, I think when we started our first company, we were both in school and we were both, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and we kind of just jumped in feet first. I think I would do more landscape analysis versus just running in and starting. So I would try to find where the best opportunities are it would probably still be biotech and in the gene delivery space, but where are high needs and high opportunities and where do technologies overlap there? We kind of took the single idea of making the gene pill and dove into that directly. And so, yeah, I think a deeper landscape analysis.
Understood. And when on my end is when you're looking to hire someone, besides the technical skills, what are some of the personality traits that you look for?
I think being a fast learner and a level of autonomy and accountability, because we are a startup and a small company, so we don't have the same capacity that you might have at a larger company. So I do think for us, we do look for people that are able to learn the task quickly and are able to have a reasonable level of autonomy. Of course, we're still there for guidance and still there for feedback, but I think I think that's key.
And we live in a digital world with all of this. And sometimes I like to wonder, and I'm going to address this question to you. In a world void of computers and all the technology that's available to us, what would you be doing?
Hopefully the same thing. I mean, the nice thing is pipetting and making drugs are not digital yet, although we definitely benefit from those tools. I do think that, yeah, I really do like developing therapeutics, so I'd be doing that in some way.
Which really reflects the fact that you're mission driven. It really is what you believe in and what you would want to do.
Absolutely.
So I think we're about to wrap this up, but before we go, I saw that you grew up in Kansas. How did you feel about the Super Bowl?
Well, I'm a nerd. I don't really watch sports, but I did watch the Super Bowl, and my dad and brother were super happy, and yeah, It was good. Sorry, 49ers, I guess.
A lot of broken TVs in San
Yeah.
Francisco.
Yeah, but I am a yeah, I'm a nerd. I don't really watch sports. Yeah.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you. Really appreciate your insights, sharing your journey, sharing your experience, being open about it. I feel like as founders, as we're all the founders that are earlier in their journey, we look up to the founders that have already walked the walks and taken the steps, because we watch, we imitate, we emulate, we see what works, and we try to integrate it to our own journeys. So having someone like you come and speak and share that with us, it really helps, and it matters a lot. And I think you yourself can remember the different times where you saw someone speak about their own experience, how it has an impact on you, and how it marked the way you shaped your own journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. And thank you so much for moderating. And I appreciate being invited.
Thank you. I'll pass it back to Deepak.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, that was such an insightful conversation. Thank you, Timothy, and thank you, Akon. Appreciate both of your time. Again, for the audience, if you'd like to hear more events similar to this, please come join TiE. We are at tiesv.ai. Love for the audience to come participate, help us out. Thank you again, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.